said that Gutfeld talks about you all the time.
Who is he? Really, who is he?
I don't watch the show.
He has a show.
I don't watch the
never
show.
heard of him.
Yeah.
I guess he's just obsessed with me.
No. Next, Joy's going to say she's never heard of carbs. Seriously, her denial of knowing me is as believable as her red hair. But obsession? I mean, come on, Joy. Where would you even get that idea? Like Joy Behar's face, it's looking worse and worse by the day. More full of crap than Joy Behar after a night of scotch and Taco Bell. Her being named Joy is like me being named ugly. Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. It now smells like a humid day inside Joy Behar's moo-moo. The motives stink worse than Joy Behar's jog bra. I mean, assuming she jogs. Oh, wait, there she is. She has a point. Maybe I am obsessed, but some people are obsessed with Bigfoot, and they don't get to see him on TV every afternoon.
She said she didn't even know who he was. On live TV, Joy Behar decades into her career, known for her sharp tongue and unapologetic attitude, looked dead into the camera and pretended like she had never heard of Greg Gutfeld. But let's get real. This wasn't just shade. This was denial turned into theater. Because what followed wasn't some polite media back and forth. It was a verbal ambush, and Joy never saw it coming. Gutfeld, host of one of the most watched late-night shows in America, didn't just clap back, he launched a full-scale takedown, and it wasn't your typical shout fest.
And last week, Joy Behar accused Elon Musk of being pro-apartheid, but then begged him afterwards not to sue. Musk lawyers have yet to comment because they're still checking to see if it's legal to sue a cow.
Shots fired.
Just a legal question. I don't know why it's so upsetting. I don't make the rules in this country. All right.
He used calm, cutting sarcasm that felt more like a roast at a celebrity funeral than political commentary. He didn't need to yell. Every joke hit like a slap. Every jab was timed with sniper precision. And instead of acting shocked or defensive, he leaned into it with a smug confidence that made it impossible to look away.
It's about the view. It's like it's become like a medical hospital that displays human misfailure. Like it's like here, let's look at this political oddity. Ah! You know, it's like it really is like the left-wing equivalent of a carnival sideshow, except instead of bearded ladies and fat clowns and two-headed cows. Well, let me rephrase that. But The View is a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. You know, how can you now speak the truth when for years you've been telling lie after lie after lie? Now you're carrying this big bag of rocks around you because it's too harmful for their ego to admit that we really were dishonest. And they could be honest. All they would have to say is, look, we hate Trump so much. We were willing to lie about Joe Biden because we felt he was preferable. We thought our lying and our cover-up was on your behalf. Just say that. You're still scum, but at least you're an honest scum.
Why was this moment so wild? Because Joy didn't just roll her eyes and move on her reaction, or more importantly, her lack of reaction, said everything. A woman who's built her brand on being loud, brash, and always ready with a comeback, froze. For a second, you could see the cracks. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue. Because what came next wasn't just about Joy Behar. It became a full-blown media earthquake. What made Joy's denial so unbelievable wasn't just that she said it, it was how she said it. With that smug smirk and a wave of the hand, as if Greg Gutfeld was some nobody off the street. But here's the twist. If she really didn't know who he was, why was she so triggered? Why even bring him up at all?
Now to some news. The feral monsters of The View say they've never heard of you-know-who. True, the show that makes mornings hell claim that my name doesn't ring a bell. It's time for...
Our
View on The View. Ugh.
Yeah, the witch's coven finally shows me some lovin'. Yesterday on The View, yours truly was the subject of conversation. Apparently, the broads have no idea who I am, or so they say. Hit it, Gladys.
That's the move of someone who knows exactly who's getting under their skin. And Greg didn't let it slide. He fired back with a level of sarcasm that left no room for misinterpretation. He mocked the denial, comparing it to someone saying they'd never heard of carbs completely ridiculous. Then he turned the heat up by going after her looks, her persona, even her wardrobe. Some might say it was harsh, but that's Gutfeld's style. He doesn't just responde, dismantles. He joked that Joy's obsession with him was as real as her red hair. He called her out for what he saw as hypocrisy and arrogance. And he didn't just do it once. He did it in layers, building a character profile of Joy Behar as someone who dishes it out on TV daily, but can't take a joke when it's her turn in the hot seat. This wasn't a clapback. This was an expose, wrapped in stand-up comedy, served with a cold glass of, "You asked for it." And what's even crazier?
Terrible. Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott dropped by the Furry Five earlier today. And I thought the U.S. had a distinct policy against torture. He took the opportunity to call them out over crap Joy Behar recently said about him, specifically that he doesn't get systemic racism, which is like saying Brian Stelter doesn't get Ben and Jerry's. But Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out.
The moment he said her name, the audience felt the tension. Joy tried to play it cool, but her silence, that said everything. And then came the real gut punch. Greg didn't stop at calling out her denial. He went straight for her ego. He said Joy wasn't even on the show that day because, quote, Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. Brutal? Yes, but it wasn't just cruelty for the sake of laughs. Greg was painting a picture. A media veteran, so used to throwing punches, now running for cover the second things got personal.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
He took every stereotype ever thrown at the view out of touch elitism, political bias, smug groupthink, and shoved it all back into the spotlight, using Joy as the prime example. It wasn't just a roast, it was a statement that the show, and specifically Joy, had become the very thing they used to mock. Greg called it a carnival sideshow, replacing bearded ladies with left-wing pundits and two-headed cows, with hosts clinging to outdated narratives. But here's what made it sting. He wasn't just attacking The View for being liberal. He was accusing them of knowing the truth and still choosing to lie, just to push an agenda. He said it outright they hate Trump so much, they'd rather lie about Biden to protect their own version of reality. And Joy, who's usually first to cut off a guest or deliver a sarcastic zinger. She wasn't there to respond. She wasn't even in the ring. And when you're not there to fight back, every punch lands harder. Then came the moment that really flipped the narrative.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sonny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter.
Greg Gutfeld, who's known for turning news commentary into stand-up material, didn't just jab at Joy, compared The View to a medical hospital for human misfailure. He didn't hold back. He said the show had become a dumping ground for political delusion, where people go not to get informed, but to be fed the same emotional garbage on repeat. And when he talked about Joy specifically, it wasn't random insults. He brought receipts. He reminded everyone of a recent scandal where Joy accused Elon Musk of being pro-apartheid. But here's the twist: after making the wild accusation on air, she allegedly begged him not to sue. The kind of contradiction that makes even die-hard viewers raise an eyebrow. Gutfeld didn't just mock her for that. He went further, joking that Musk's lawyers were still trying to figure out if it's legal to sue a cow.
You know, I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Savage. Yes, but strategically savage. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about credibility. Greg was positioning himself as the guy who says what others won't, and Joy as the woman who hides behind the safety net of her show and her panel, a place where disagreement is shouted down, not debated. And all of this played out like a comedy set dipped in acid. Every line was another cut, every joke another layer peeled off. By the end of that segment, it wasn't about who was right or wrong.
Iris, do you think it's a good strategy on the behalf of The View to pretend we don't exist when we know they know we exist?
That's a brilliant idea. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Gutfeld. I'm sorry, not ringing the bell.
Usually at the airport.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. Huh? Really? I sit next to him? Really? How many? No, this is what elitists do who can't, like, if you don't know who someone is, how did you know to automatically hate him? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, that's how fake and full of she is. Gutfeld, never heard of him. Don't like him. Why? Because why? That's why I just turned to one of my kids. Because why?
Yeah.
Because I don't know who he is. Never heard of him at all in my entire life. But why? Because I don't know. Because they are the last TV show to talk about high turnover. Mm-hmm. We've been rolling 3 steady for a long time.
Yeah.
We don't take breaks in the commercial to get away from each other. Well, that's what the drinking's for.
Yes.
It was about who still looked like they were in control. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't Joy. Now, this is where it got personal and weirdly poetic. Greg Gutfeld admitted it. "Maybe I am obsessed," he said. But then he delivered the punchline. Some people are obsessed with Bigfoot, and they don't get to see him on TV every afternoon. That line hit like a grenade wrapped in glitter. He wasn't just calling Joy Behar a mythical creature. He was mocking her as something outdated, irrelevant, and paraded around like a sideshow act. He described her not just as a TV host, but as someone who's become a walking contradiction.
Here's Joy Behar talking about refusing to share a kidney.
I find it friends
bizarre.
with a Trump supporter. I won't give them a kidney, but I could be friends with them.
Hey, Joy, it's a kidney, not a pizza. Of course, she's kidding at first, but then she goes on to explain the moral foundation for her resentment, and it's the same one that drives all deadly ideologies.
Someone who built a career on being the queen of sass, only to be roasted so hard even her makeup questioned its life choices. And he wasn't wrong about one thing. Joy has always been known for her sharp tongue, eye rolls that could kill, and never backing down from a fight. But this time, silence. And that silence was loud. Because while Greg was out here dropping zingers and roasting her entire career, Joy, normally the first to clap back, was nowhere to be seen. He painted it like a slow-motion crash. And viewers couldn't look away. Not because it was cruel, but because it felt like the unmasking of someone who's always in control, suddenly losing grip. At that point, it didn't even feel like a roast anymore. It felt like Greg was tearing down a statue chipping away at the polished version of Joy Behar that's been on our screens for years, and showing what's really underneath. Things took an even darker turn when Greg brought up Tim Scott, Republican senator and presidential candidate who had recently appeared on The View. Joy Behar wasn't there for that episode, and Greg took full advantage. He claimed Joy's absence was no coincidence, throwing out another brutal line that Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. Not just a dig at her absence, but a direct shot at her physical appearance and work ethic. But the real fire came when he addressed the comment Joy had previously made about Tim Scott. She claimed he doesn't understand systemic racism, which Greg blasted as not just offensive but absurd. He compared it to saying Brian Stelter doesn't understand Ben. Jerry's hitting both hosts with a one-liner that was both funny and vicious. And then came the nuke. Greg reminded viewers that Joy once admitted to dressing up as a black woman for Halloween. He didn't just call her a hypocrite, he exposed what he saw as a long trail of questionable behavior being brushed off by the media. And while Joy wasn't there to respond, the silence only made the burn feel hotter. Greg painted a picture of a woman who throws accusations with zero self-awareness, a figure shielded by the safety of daytime TV's echo chamber. It wasn't just a takedown anymore. This was turning into a character demolition, one brutal line at a time. And the audience? They were eating it up. Now here's where it went from roasting to total collapse. Greg didn't just keep throwing punches, made it a full-blown spectacle. And what made it even more brutal was how calm he stayed through it all. No shouting, no ranting, just laser-focused sarcasm, like he was dissecting Joy Behar's career with a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. He mocked The View as a victim of the sunk cost fallacy, saying the hosts had been lying for so long they couldn't stop, even if they wanted to. He said all they had to do was admit they hated Trump so much. They were willing to cover for Biden, just say it, he said. And then he twisted the knife with this line, "You're still scum, but at least you're honest scum." That right there, cold and calculated. And while Joy is usually the master of dramatic eye rolls and cutting retorts, this time there were no comebacks. Greg wasn't even in the same room, but it felt like he was controlling the entire conversation from miles away. Every word he delivered turned her usual confidence into a shaky performance. He turned her greatest strength, her mouth, into her biggest weakness by making sure she had nothing left to say. The beauty of it, if you can call it that, was that it wasn't even a debate. It was a one-sided showcase of how wit, timing, and cold-blooded strategy can completely dismantle someone who isn't ready for it. And Joy? She looked like a ballerina mid-performance who forgot all her steps. And just when you thought Greg had peaked, he went even harder this time, turning Joy's entire public image into a punchline. He painted the picture clearly. Joy Behar, sitting on her daytime throne, used to being untouchable, suddenly found herself being picked apart like it was open mic night at a roast battle. He said The View wasn't just misguided, it was a carnival sideshow, but without the charm. No bearded lady, just political theater wrapped in recycled talking points. Then, with his signature dry delivery, Greg called out the hosts as feral monsters who pretend not to know who he is yet, talk about him constantly. It was a brutal call-out of the show's passive-aggressive tactics. And it landed. Then came the line that really cracked the whole illusion. This wasn't a casual jab or playful sparring. It was an artillery barrage. And that's exactly what it felt like. Greg wasn't aiming to banter, he was there to expose. He picked apart Joy's on-air contradictions, mocked her past political hot takes, and pointed out how easily she shifted from bold to incoherent when her views were challenged. The whole thing played out like a slow-motion car crash impossible to look away from. Greg started by poking fun, but then stripped away every layer of Joy's daytime persona. By the time he was done, her reputation as the Queen of Sass looked more like a faded costume she could barely keep wearing. And again, through all of it, no rebuttal, no response. Just the audience watching Joy fall silent under pressure she wasn't ready for. And then came the part that made everyone stop and say, wait, is Joy actually breaking down? Because this wasn't just about political jabs anymore. Greg had turned up the heat so high, it looked like her entire public armor was starting to melt. Joy Behar, who's built a career out of being fast, fearless, and loud, suddenly had nothing. No witty comeback, no clever deflection, just awkward silence, and it was all caught on camera. That silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. You could almost see the gears in her head turning, desperately searching for something to say, but nothing came. This was the woman who could silence a guest with one sarcastic glare. And now, she looked like someone caught totally off guard, like a performer who forgot her lines in the middle of the biggest show of her life. It wasn't a meltdown with screaming or tears, it was worse. It was a visible, slow-motion collapse of the image she had spent years building. And it hit differently because Joy's entire brand is confidence. Her whole appeal is that she never blinks, never backs down. But here, in front of millions, she blinked. The quick wit? Gone. The sass? MIA. All that was left was a flicker of vulnerability, something viewers had never seen from her before. And it left people wondering, was this just a bad moment? Or the start of something bigger? Because in media, once the cracks start to show, they don't just go away, they spread. Fast. The internet saw that crack and exploded. Within hours, clips of Joy's frozen reaction and Greg's savage monologue were everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. It was a digital feeding frenzy. Memes popped up like wildfire. Some showed Greg as a Roman gladiator standing victorious in an arena, while Joy was edited into a dazed cartoon character drowning in sarcasm. People weren't just laughing, they were analyzing every frame, every pause, every raised eyebrow. Some praised Greg's performance as a verbal masterclass. Others felt bad for Joy, saying it was unfair to tear someone down so publicly. But regardless of what side people were on, everyone was talking about it. And that's when it hit a whole new level. Greg's takedown wasn't just a roast, it was a moment. The kind that turns into a viral legend. Late-night hosts started mentioning it. Influencers broke it down frame by frame. Even people who had never watched The View or Greg Gutfeld's show were suddenly in on the drama. What made it hit so hard wasn't just the jokes, it was the shift in power. For once, Joy Behar wasn't running the table. She wasn't the alpha in the room. Greg flipped the script, and the world noticed. This wasn't just a jab between two TV personalities. This was a full-on culture war moment, dressed up as comedy, and it caught fire because it revealed something real. Even the most unshakable public figures can fall flates, especially when the spotlight gets too hot. And here's where things got even more personal and, honestly, a little uncomfortable. Greg dug up a moment where Joy Behar once said she wouldn't give a kidney to a friend who supported Trump. That wasn't a joke. She said it and then tried to walk it back by explaining her moral foundation for the resentment. Greg didn't let it slide. He clowned on the whole thing, saying, "Hey Joy, it's a kidney, not a pizza." But then he took it further. He called out the underlying thinking, saying it wasn't just pettiness, it was the same toxic logic that feeds dangerous ideologies. That's a heavy claim. But he was making a point. Joy isn't just someone who throws shade. She builds her worldview around her political bias, even if it means denying basic humanity. And the internet noticed. Some were horrified, others laughed at the absurdity of it. But the bigger takeaway? That Greg wasn't just targeting her hot takes, he was exposing a pattern. A pattern where personal grudges disguised as political values take center stage, and empathy gets pushed to the back. Meanwhile, Joy had to sit with it. There were no fiery rebuttals, no clever one-liners to wash it away. Just more fuel for a public already questioning if the queen of clapbacks was losing her grip. At this point, the takedown wasn't just landing, it was digging deep. And Joy's silence? That was the loudest response of all. While Joy Behar was trying to hold her grounder, at least not visibly fall apart, the world around her was reacting in real time. Social media split into two camps, those who saw Greg Gutfeld as a savage truth-teller, and those who rallied around Joy as a wounded veteran of daytime TV, suddenly humanized in front of millions. Some people praised Joy's visible discomfort, calling it karma for years of smug commentary. Others called for compassion, saying she finally cracked under the nonstop pressure of the spotlight. But the reaction wasn't just about sympathy or schadenfreude, it was about what this moment meant. It showed that even someone like Joy Behar, who built an empire on being unshakable, could be rattled when her carefully crafted persona was stripped down on national television. And with that, the media sharks came swimming. Every hot take she'd ever delivered, every over-the-top moment, every smug exchange on The View, it all resurfaced. Clips from years ago started going viral again, but this time not with admiration, with mockery. The same theatrics that once made her ratings gold were now being picked apart like a blooper reel. What Greg had done was more than humiliate her. He rewrote the narrative around her. Suddenly, Joy wasn't the bold, unfiltered voice of daytime TV, she was the woman who froze, the woman who had no comeback, the woman who got owned and didn't even try to fight back. And in today's media world, once that switch flips, it's hard to turn it off. And now we reach the end of the storm, the part where it all comes together. Because this wasn't just about Greg Gutfeld embarrassing Joy Behar. It became a symbol of something much bigger. A snapshot of today's media culture, where one sharp joke can turn into a viral takedown, and one missed beat can crush a carefully built persona. Greg didn't shout, he didn't rage. He used wit like a scalpel. Every line was calculated, every pause intentional. He didn't just win the momentha, set a new bar for how to dismantle someone on live TV without ever stepping on stage with them. And people noticed. Media analysts called it a masterclass. Social feeds turned it into a meme parade. The moment was dissected from every angle. And Greg's reputation? It shot through the roof. He became the guy who could make you laugh while slicing through a public figure's ego like butter. But Joy? She became a cautionary tale. Someone who flew too close to the flame of her own performance. Someone who built walls with sarcasm and deflection, but forgot that even the strongest walls have cracks. That moment of silence, of confusion, of no comeback, it wasn't just a media blooper. It was a reminder that even TV's loudest voices are still human, still vulnerable. So, what does this all mean going forward? The stage is set for more battles, more drama, more chaos. Because if this takedown taught us anything, it's that in today's media arena, no one is untouchable. Not even the queen of daytime sass. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.